Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode, wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on. As always, thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you guys for the kind messages, for sharing this podcast around, for some of the really, really nice emails that you've sent me that I've been able to forward along to some guests as well. Really, really appreciate it, and really, really excited to get into this one today. I've said this so many times on here, but as all of you know who've been listening for a long time, I love talking about culture. I love talking about programs that are doing things the right way, and the way that different coaches go about in different ways, helping to kind of create some awesome young men and women and young adults and kind of mold them through basketball. And as you know, any time I get the opportunity to talk to a guest who's really passionate about that, I'm all in. And that is definitely going to be the case today. So if you are into culture and you really want to hear about the different things and the awesome stuff that programs are doing, this is going to be another fun episode. I titled this one specifically Quality People Culture. That this is going to be a really fun episode because I'm really passionate about building really good people through the game of basketball, and I'm confident my guest is the same way. So as I've said in many episodes before, I feel like I'm going to learn just as much as you guys who are listening are going to learn as well. So without further ado, let's kind of jump into this topic of quality people culture. I'm very happy to be joined by the head boys basketball coach at Hera High School. Coach Chad Rochelle is joining us today. Coach, how are you doing?
Doing well. Thank you very much for having me.
Very excited to be talking to you, Coach. So let's go ahead and get started with your journey. Let's go ahead and get going with where is the game taking you? Where's your coaching journey? Where's your basketball journey taking you?
Yeah.
And let's go right into that.
Okay. Well, just so people know a little bit about me, like I said, I'm right here in Hera, Oklahoma, which is just east of Oklahoma City, about 15 minutes. I'm 38 years old. This is my 16th year of teaching and coaching. I also teach special education at the high school. My coaching career started in Sherman, Texas, which is just the very northern part of Texas. And I was an assistant there for 5 years at a large school. And then I moved back to Oklahoma, which is where I'm from. And this is my 11th year in Hera. My 7th year as the head coach. I was the assistant coach for 4 years here before that. Been married for 14 years, got 3 wonderful kids, a nine-year-old daughter, a 6-year-old son, a 2-year-old daughter. So that's just a quick little thing about me. Like I said, played high school basketball, didn't end up playing college basketball, had a couple of small offers, but ended up staying home, living with my parents while I went to college, worked 2 jobs, and then just got back into the coaching thing. And, just something I was always, basketball and sports in general, was always a passion of mine, and just found a love for it early on as a kid. And honestly didn't know that I wanted to go, if I wanted to be a coach, like right out of high school, I wanted to do something with sports and athletics. But then that coaching thing just kind of came calling, and the teaching thing. And obviously it's worked out really well. I couldn't be happier. So, up here in a great place. This place is home. My family's not too far away. My wife's family's right down the road. And so we're in a really, really good spot. And we've had a really good basketball tradition, a lot of success at the school I'm at. So we're just trying to keep that going.
Did your position that you had in Texas, was that related to coaching? Is that what got you out there? Or is that something else that got you out to Texas?
So that was right out of college. And I taught health in the classroom and then moved to special education there. I was one of the assistant basketball coaches. We had a very large staff. There was a large school. And I was on the basketball staff. I was on the football staff for a couple of years. I did track. I did softball, kind of did a little bit of a lot of those things there. But each year I was very fortunate that each year I was at Sherman, I was able to kind of move up. Head coach that hired me, Jeff McCullough, he's a legend down in Texas. And he hired me on as the head 8th grade coach. my first year, and he allowed me to do everything with the high school. I went to practices, I went to games, sat on the bench with them, traveled with them, tried to just learn as much as I could and soak up as much as I could from him. There's so much of what I do in my coaching that's influenced from him. And then he left, and another head coach came in, Ryan Patel, who was fantastic in a bunch of different ways, just so different but so good in himself. And I was able to take a lot of stuff from him, and a lot of this culture stuff from him too. So, never became the head coach there. I was young, I was never in a big hurry to become a head coach. I had seen guys that had jumped into it so fast and got themselves in tough situations. And, and even a couple opportunities came up, and, talking to those head coaches that I'd been under had, kind of gave me some great advice on, just not being in a hurry and making sure the situation's good, and learning as much as you can. And because, I was an assistant coach for 9 years, and you feel like you're ready to become a head coach. And I think you can be an assistant coach 20 years, but until you become a head coach, there's a lot of things you're not ready for. Once you get in that head coach seat, it changes, and there's a lot of things you learn on the fly. And then the head coach I was under, I talked about the other two. I was fortunate enough to be, when I came to Hare, I was the assistant for 4 years under a coach by the name of Brian Jennings. And he's one of the smartest basketball guys I've been around. And he treated me so well. And we had such a good coaching and friend relationship that I was able to learn, so much from him. So I've got kind of the good story of, I don't have many horror stories. I was under 3 head coaches, and they were all just fantastic. And I'm still friends with all of them, and I still reach out to all of them. And, just a lot that I've taken from all 3 that's kind of molded me into my own style, my own way of coaching. So
It's kind of hitting the jackpot there, going 3 for 3 like that.
yeah, it's been, because I've heard some horror stories from some coaches, and man, it just hadn't been that way for me. I've been very fortunate and been able to coach some really, really good players, at both schools and under those 3 coaches. So that's pretty big time too.
So let me ask you before I get to my next question about what that transition was like for you at Hara when you shifted from assistant to head coach. When you made that switch, were there anything in particular that kind of surprised you once you had to put on that head coaching hat?
Yeah, a lot of the stuff that didn't have to do with basketball.
Yeah.
As an assistant coach, all you have to worry about is the basketball stuff. And once you become the head coach, then all of a sudden you've got a budget that you've got to run and handle the money, and you've got to do all the paperwork and the preseason meetings and all the purchase orders and the parent meeting. I mean, just all the stuff that's outside of basketball that nobody ever really thinks about. Like us being on the court coaching is probably the least amount of what we do of so many as far as our time goes. So that was really the biggest adjustment for me. Is it was, as an assistant, it was just basketball, scouting, watching film, game plan, practice. And then head coach, it's just kids getting in trouble, teachers calling you, parents, just all that stuff that you're like, oh my goodness, I thought this was just basketball.
Yeah. Crazy how there's such a
Man,
difference between basketball coach and then running a program, right?
you grow up really fast. You learn a lot really, really quick, and having people to reach out to, like those 3 coaches I was under, helps. It makes a big difference,
Well, and like you said, like how for some, newer, younger coaches to be thrown right into that head coaching role when they're maybe like really young and maybe really inexperienced and haven't even had a chance to necessarily like digest all like the basketball coaching part, let alone like the
Absolutely.
running a program part. Whew, that could be really overwhelming if you're not in the right spot.
Absolutely. Yes.
So you mentioned a little bit about Hara High School, and I really wanted to kind of set the stage here as we kind of shift into talking about the quality people culture aspect. And so, what would you describe Hara High School as? Like, kind of what's the environment, the town, kind of the demographic? What's kind of the
Yeah.
scene there about what the school's like?
So like I said, we're east of Oklahoma City, about 15 minutes. So right, if you're downtown Oklahoma City, there's a major highway, Highway 40, that runs out of Oklahoma City. We're about 15 minutes to the east of it. And we're a 4A. Oklahoma goes to 6A. We're a 4A. We're about middle of the pack right now, 4A. We've got about 550 students, but we are growing extremely fast right now. They have built a turnpike that goes pretty much through our town, and there are houses that are being built and housing additions all over the place, businesses coming in, and they're really projecting us to grow really fast here soon. We've been 5A before and then came back down to 4A, and I expect us in the next few years to probably be back up at that 5A. But Hare is it's a town that if you drive through it, it's got a very small town feel to it.
Okay.
We're out in the country. There's deer everywhere when you're driving down the road. But you get to our school, our school covers a lot of ground. We got a lot of miles that our school district covers, which what makes us kind of a large school. But that's kind of a feel. If you drive through here, you might feel like it's like a 2A school, but we just cover so much ground that we're a mid to larger 4A. But we've been fortunate. We've got all of our sports and band and cheerleading, everything right now we have a really good community support. A lot of the local businesses around, they really support all of our athletics, and not even athletics, just a lot of our school things in general. That involvement just kind of keeps growing, and we've got really good people around here. That's one of my favorite reasons of working here is the kids. I mean, I'm not even talking basketball, just the kids we get to work with at school. I do special education, and I have a kind of a little different, area that I'm teaching in, and the kids I get to work with every day, they're so interesting and keep things exciting, and just it's a lot of positive around. Our administration, great people, supports you very well, people you can feel comfortable talking to, going to. So right now we're just expecting a lot of growth, and how we're going to handle that growth and keep moving forward with this growth that is coming.
That's really fascinating. Just like imagining, the how kind of spread out the area is. Talk about deer everywhere, but then I also know, because like you said, you're so close to Oklahoma City too, that kind of like have this molding kind of one direction you get the whole rural aspect, then the other you're right there in OKC.
That's it. Yeah, I can be at a Thunder game, Oklahoma City Thunder game in 20 something minutes, and I can be at a OU game in 35 minutes, and but I'm out here living in the country, so which is good for me because I'm not a city person. I grew up in southern Oklahoma in the country, and so it's really, for me personally, it's a great area.
Nice, excellent. So I know you've started giving some praise about your school and everything. So I'm excited to get into the people and the students and the people there at Harris. So as we kind of talk about the idea of quality people culture, let me just ask you, what does that mean? What is that kind of philosophy that you have of having a quality people culture?
Yeah. So really my philosophy behind that, and like you said, it's very important to me. It's coaching to me shouldn't just be about winning. Especially when we're coaching at the high school level, where we've got these kids at such a important part of their life, a growing part of their life, where they can learn so much, and a lot of the things they learn in these 4 years that we have them is going to impact them and help them or hurt them through the rest of the life. So to me, it's developing the individual, not just the basketball player. Yeah, I'm a basketball coach, and I'm trying to teach X's and O's, and I'm trying to teach skills on the court, and I'm trying to teach things that are going to help us win. But what am I doing to help that individual be successful when they get past high school? And to me, that's what quality people culture is, developing that individual. We want to develop quality people, people that, something that we preach a lot is, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, servant leadership.
Yep.
And making other people more important than you. And that's what I try to push all the time, is I always hope every year that my players know that when I'm in there, they're the most important thing to me. I tell them all the time, I'm with them from October to March just about as much, if not more, that I'm with my own kids at my house, and that they are extremely important, that they need to make the other person, more important than themselves. And if you've got a team that's full of people that care about each other, and they're making that next person on their team more important than them, then that's care, and that's quality people. And that's going to carry on. That's going to carry on with them way past high school. And we always say, some of these phrases, I'm sure all these coaches, anybody that listens, we want them to succeed in life. We want them to be good husbands, good fathers, be good businessmen, be successful wherever. And I think that's just one thing about athletics to me. I think athletics, no matter what the sport is, I think athletics are so important, and coaching profession is so important, because there's so many skills that we can learn from athletics that go into the business world and the family world and things. And so I think that's on us as coaches to just do the best that we can do, to impact those kids and teach them to where they do something down the road and they can look back and go, that basketball program, that football program, whatever, that helped me make that decision. That helped me get to where I am today. So to me, that's a kind of a long
Oh no, it's all good.
synopsis of it. So, quality people lead to quality results. That's something that we say.
So I know that you're kind of you were in a different situation than some, in that you started there at Harrow, you were an assistant, and then you came as a head coach. So when that culture, how much of it was already established by the time that you got to Harrow?
Yeah. I, once again, very fortunate. Coach Brian Jennings, who I brought up earlier, who was the head coach, he already had a good culture. He was the head coach there for 16 years, I believe, before he resigned, and I was able to. He went to the administration world, and I was able to take over. So I inherited a pretty good culture, from what he had done, and our program had been successful. We when I became the head coach, we had made the state tournament. I think 3 out of the 4 years before that, and then we made the state tournament my first year as a head coach because I inherited a very good basketball team. And so the expectations were already there. The atmosphere was good. The team concept was good. So I didn't have a lot of difficulty, to be honest. I wish I had kind of a big time story of but it was a very good situation for me. And but still, first year head coach, and even though I had really good players, which, by the way, I like to throw this out there. I had my first year as a head coach, I had Brady Manick as a senior. He just played in the national championship last year for North Carolina, and he was a senior for me my first year as a head coach. So that made coaching somewhat easy.
Yeah.
But obviously, anytime you take over a program, you still want to make things your own. And
Yep.
and obviously I wanted to get some things understood my way or whatever. And I brought some things like our discipline plan and stuff that I thought that I'd already kind of had in place and had kind of been taking over that anyways, but to make it my own. And my player handbook that all the players get and the parents that goes over everything, that was something new that they hadn't had. And the most difficult part was really just getting the kids and the parent buy-in. Anytime a first year head coach gets hired, no matter how long you've been assistant, you're still that first year head coach. And our expectations were very, very high coming into that year. So
Sure.
it was how do I get people to buy in that I know what I'm doing and that I'm going to put these kids in the best situation possible, and we're going to have that successful season that we're supposed to. And I think with the help of have had good assistants and good administration, and obviously good players. Good players make your job so much easier. But my main thing I think that I did that was really important was, even though these kids knew me because I was an assistant, and that's something that's difficult too, is you go from the assistant, you're kind of that good guy a lot. There's the head coach is the one that gets mad and makes the decisions that makes the players mad sometimes. And the assistant coach sometimes is that guy that the players can kind of go to for that reassurance and that confidence boost and stuff. So when you go from being that assistant and being that guy to now you're the head coach, how do those kids respond to that? And, so me being able to hold them accountable and them know that there was not going to be any special treatment for anybody, no matter how good they were, no matter who they were, that I was holding everybody to the same standards, the same expectations. And, I was able to do that early on, and it just turned into, man, it was a really fun year. For that first year, it went by like a blur. But it was one of my funnest years I've ever had coaching. Was my first year as a head coach because of the environment, the players I inherited, and the season that we had. So it was I always look back on that first year, and that was a pretty special one.
Did you find as you went into your second year that you were able to just kind of keep building off of that culture, or did you find, because when that group moved on, did the expectations kind of change if a new group come in? Were you able to maybe do things a little bit differently because there were more of your guys versus like maybe a lot of from the previous coach, or how did that kind of change from year 1 to year 2?
Yeah, as far as the standards and expectations, I don't think those changed too much because we had been through a run there where we had gone to the state tournament 4 out of 6 years, and we had like a 49 game home win streak, and um, everybody expected to be successful. I mean, we've been good. We're going to continue being good. Now, sometimes at the high school level, those expectations are hard to keep when players change and players graduate. We graduated some really good seniors that year, but it did. I think there was some positive things there to me being the assistant and becoming the head coach because of the familiarity people with me, and I still coached the same way even when I was an assistant. I didn't coach any differently. It's just being the head guy and having those standards in place. But our kids, they knew those standards, and there's a lot of things we didn't have to fight. Like, for instance, we got a no profanity policy, and and I know that sounds like a little thing to some people, but to me, it's really important. And you know, I'm very confident. Like, if you come into our gym during one of our practices, watch us play or whatever, you're not going to hear negative language. You're not going to hear profanity. You're not going to hear kids speaking down to each other and things like that. And that's just a product of what we've instilled there, and the kids know it and they buy into it. Matter of fact, the last 2 assistants that I've hired, I specifically remember them saying, after I hired them and they were going through summer ball and stuff with us, one of them told me one time, he said, "Man, coach, I hadn't even thought about it, but I haven't heard any of our guys say a cuss word since I've been here." And I was like, "Well, you shouldn't. That's just something we do." And I know that's a little thing and it doesn't make people bad people, anything like that. It's just something that we do. And that's just an example that those kids, it was already in place. It's been there. I don't have to teach it. I don't have to talk about it. It's just, it is what it is. It's how it is. And they know it. So, and they kind of hold each other accountable to it, so,
Yeah.
but really, and we're involved a lot with our junior high too, as high school coaches here in Hera. So even the kids at junior high are already kind of in tune with our standards and expectations and how we do things. And me, as I'm in the junior high practices in the mornings, and so they already know me from the 7th grade. And by the time they get to me at the high school, that really helps with a lot of those things, because kids aren't having to learn things. They've already learned. They've already been around us. They already know. And you just kind of get to just worry about basketball at that point.
You mentioned in one of your earlier answers the idea of servant leadership. And so I was curious about what do you think that looks like in a basketball coaching setting? What would be like some examples you think of somebody being a servant leader as a basketball coach?
So basically, like, it goes back to putting the other person first. And, like, I'm sure you've seen programs, or, when you were a player or whatever, I know I was, that seniors, for instance, try to use that senior card a lot. I'm a senior, the sophomores carry the equipment off the bus, or, stuff like that. And we don't necessarily follow that stuff. We're, each person is going to help do whatever. There's nobody that's special. If we're setting up the gym for games, then everybody's doing this. If we're cleaning the locker room, everybody's doing this. If we go out to eat, this is something that I actually got from another coach from another school. But when you have team meals and stuff, when you select a certain group, like your seniors, they're the ones that are going to refill everybody's drinks that.
That's an interesting concept. I think that, not a lot of coaches necessarily like buy into, because there's a lot of mentality, I think, of, right, like the seniors have kind of earned this. So, they have a right to act a certain way and the other group doesn't.
Stuff like that. So do what?
I was going to say, I think it's interesting because I think for some coaches that might be a complete shift in their thinking, right? That there's, the seniors earn like certain privileges because they've been there a while, but like the younger people have to do certain things. But like that's not something that you buy into, though, which I think is really cool.
And there, there's some things that we, I mean, seniors, as far as like your leaders and your captains in practice and stuff like that. I mean, I think that stuff is earned. Obviously, that's your guys with experience and your guys that have been there and, help the young guys that way. Yeah. And, like I said, like we just try to make sure that no matter what their class is and stuff, that, everybody in our program is equal and treated equal, and they're treated equal from the coaches, from the seniors all the way down to our managers. We treat our managers just as equals as the players. They're not just out there to get water and get towels and stuff. They're not disrespected. They're, They're treated just like everybody else, given the same opportunities, the same, travel suits and gear and food and all that kind of stuff. So just making sure these guys don't ever want to feel like, you're not more important than other people. And so anything we can do to do that. But there is some things that obviously come with being a senior upperclassman or somebody that has started varsity and been that experienced person, that obviously, like your team captains and your guys that lead the huddles and the breakouts and stuff like that. I think that stuff can be earned. Um, but
Yeah.
the younger kids buy into that too. Here's this guy that's been a 3-year starter. We're going to listen to that guy when he talks. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there a lot that you do or work on in terms of like team building or kind of bringing the guys together?
But I love that stuff. So like right now, for instance, like one thing we've done, when I became the head coach, I thought it would be a really good idea. So um, I just bring this one up because we're currently doing it. So every Friday night that we have a home football game in Hera, we go out to eat as a basketball team before the game somewhere, and then go to the football game together after we eat. And that's been something that our players have really, really bought into the last few years and enjoy. And then they've kind of made it their own. Like this wasn't even me, this was my players' idea. So we go to Buffalo Wild Wings once every football season, and the newcomers for the program each year have to eat a blazing hot wing, to kind of join the team, like this is your rite of passage or whatever. You got to eat this blazing hot wing. So that's something we do. We try to do a lot of get-togethers through the year. The COVID kind of really shut that down for a couple of years, but I love having the players over to my own house, and just having meals, or a night when there's a college basketball game on or something that everybody wants to watch, and get a ping pong table or some things like that going, and have a good time. And we try to find one trip throughout every school year where we get to stay in a hotel. And I always think that's good. Some teams have to a lot because they have travel. We fortunately don't, but whether it's in the summer going to a team camp, or right now we go to a tournament up by Tulsa each season, and we stay in a hotel for a couple of nights. And I think that's important, to get away, and you're staying together, and you get to go out and eat a couple of times. You get to go do things, go bowling, or go to a movie, or just do things together like that. And fortunately enough, here at Hare, we've got, the way our numbers are on our kids, a lot of our kids are friends off the court. They hang out a lot
Yeah.
together away from the basketball gym, and you can see that. You can see that when they're in practice and in the games, because they support each other, and they have each other's backs, and that's something that really can't be taught sometimes. That's just kind of naturally there. So.
Well, I think something that really has a huge benefit to, kind of having some quality culture pieces, and I hear this from you, and I hear this from a lot of different coaches, is the amount of opportunities you can give for your players to kind of come together outside of the basketball court. I think is where you really kind of can see teams come together and kind of see people, and even coaches sometimes, right, kind of come out of their
Yeah.
shell and kind of be in a different mindset.
Absolutely. They're it's a lot more relaxed because they're not worried about messing up, or getting the coach mad at them for not, executing something. It's just relaxed. It's fun. Everybody's there to have a good time. And, I think some of the best times for teams is when you're not even, I like to talk to my players about anything but basketball a lot. You know what I mean? Because for the whole year, it's just basketball, 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 and game plan and roles. And then when you just sit down and have a conversation with them about whatever, I think those are really important too, because you kind of get to learn a little more about each other, and those kids. A big word when it comes to culture, I think, is trust. And anything you can do to earn those players' trust, because even though they're in high school and they're younger, you still got to earn their trust. They got to
Hmm.
they've got to know that one, that you care, one, that you're not lying to them, that you're being honest with them about everything, whether it's basketball or it's not basketball. They got to know that you're being honest with them, and that they can trust you and they can come to you. Because that's, if they feel that way off the court, then more than likely when you're on the court and you're telling them you need them to do this or do that or whatever, they're going to trust you and they're going to buy into it. And that's where a lot of that stuff comes into, is just developing that trust between one another, and then that trust between them. All that off court stuff, those team bonding things and team building things. I mean, that all that builds that trust, and they've got each other's back, and they, even if somebody fails, if, we draw up a play to get that certain guy the shot and he misses that shot, that the team is still, you know, got his back and, picking him up, and, there's no negativity there. And they trusted that guy to take that shot. That's just,
Yeah.
just an example, but that stuff's so important. And a
So,
lot of that's done outside of practice. So,
a- and that kind of translates into kind of my next, thought there about it, this culture here and all of the work that you do, especially in the preseason, off season, even during the season, that, kind of building the team, bringing it together. What do you feel that lets you be able to run X's and O's wise on the court? Like, what do you think you guys are able to run on the court that you can attribute to kind of the quality people culture at Hera?
well, I think, one, we're in high school, so your personnel changes every year, and you can't necessarily run the same thing year after year after year, because you got to run what's best for your personnel. And, but I think that going back to that trust, I think step one, to answer your question, whatever that may be, offensively, defensively, whether you're going to be a pressing team this year or you're going to have to play more in the half court or whatever, once those kids have developed that trust and they know that you're honest with them, and that you know what you're talking about, then it really doesn't matter what you throw at them. They're going to buy into it and believe that that's going to be what's going to make successful. And that's huge. If I go tell my team this is what we're going to do, and they look at each other and go, well, this isn't going to work, what's he talking about? Then it doesn't matter what we do.
Oh, yeah,
They have to buy into it. And a lot of that, to kind of get into answering your question, I think that's where a lot of that starts, is earning that trust from each other, and that buy-in. They say, okay, coach knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about. He's not gonna do something that's gonna put us in a situation to not be successful. So, hey, this is gonna work. This is good. Let's do that. But I think, past the X's and O's, to me, just playing hard and competing, is so important, because no matter what you run, if the kids don't play hard and they don't compete, and compete's a real big word with us, we got to compete, then it's not going to work no matter what it is. And when you have those quality people, those quality players that they care about their teammates, and they want to, I want my players to want to be successful on the floor for their teammates, not me. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
they're out there on the floor battling for each other. I'm not the one on the floor playing with them. And I don't want them to try to satisfy me or try to make me. It needs to be about their teammate. I'm gonna do my job, because I don't want to let my teammate down. And that's where if they, like let's say a lot of our kids are friends off the court, and you see that when they play together, because they bust their butts for each other and they pick each other up. And when somebody makes a play, man, they're excited. They point the finger at them, they high five them, the bench is up jumping. And when the guy doesn't make the play, when they mess up, there's nobody harping on them. Their next play, they're picking them up, telling them, let's go, pick it up, that type of stuff. And um, that just kind of, so, as far as the X's and O's goes, we here at Hera, like this year, we're actually going to be almost polar opposite of what we were the last couple of years.
Oh,
Um,
really?
the last couple of years, I've had a lot of bigs. I've had a lot of, forward center type players, and we weren't able to really push the tempo. We weren't able to really get up and press. And we ran a lot of things through the post. And now this year, we are guard heavy. We got some long athletic kids. And that's all of our classes coming up the next few years are kind of the same way. So we're really kind of changing the way we go about things, and really trying to play a faster pace and push and transition and full court press a lot, and really get up in people, try to create turnovers and things like that. And my kids, even though that's not what we've been doing the last couple of years, it didn't take very much for me at all to convince them that that's what we're going to do this year. One, because it's a fun way to play, but they believe they can do it, that's what's going to help them be successful. So we started doing it this summer, and man, they had a good time. And it was really easy to get that buy-in, which, like I say, I think that's important, because we can tell them what we want to do all day long, and if the kids on the floor, the ones doing it, they don't buy into it, it's not going to be very good.
Well,
So
I imagine with the situation that you just mentioned that there's going to be probably some of your returning players, right, whose roles are going to have to be completely different, and maybe in some
oh heck,
cases really working on a different skill set than they were before, but they're bought into it, right?
yes. And that's say we had, and it helped that, we started it this summer, and it wasn't real pretty this summer, because, like I said, we don't get to practice much. And as far as summertime, but main thing is we just wanted to play hard, compete, and play faster, and get out and pressure people. Man, our kids, I tell you what, we had a a lot of fun this summer. And I knew when the summer ended, I said, this group's going to be a fun group to coach because they're ready to go play that way. They're ready to get to go work hard. They were just summer games you're not winning and losing a state championship in the summer. And you lose a game, you go home, you're not losing your conference or anything. But our guys were disappointed when they lost games, or if it was a close game they didn't pull it off. And I've had teams in the past that didn't really show that emotion sometimes. So I actually left those with a smile on my face because I was like, this is a group that's going to compete. This group wants it. They want to go out there and get it done together. And so I really think this group, just talking this group, is they're great young men, and then they really play their tails off. So, and that effort and stuff, I say it comes from they got that trust in each other, and they want each other to be successful. And it goes from sport to sport. Like I've got so many kids that play football,
Oh,
and
sure.
like right now I've got so many kids that are on the football field right now, and which is great. And that's one thing, kind of coming back to quality people culture, is we have one thing that we have really good at Hera is coaches support from other sports. We all support each other really well, and we want to see our kids go be successful in the other sports and stuff. And our kids on the football field right now, they're being coached well, and they're being pushed hard, and they've got a good culture out there and a good belief system. And they go out there and do that and have some success, that can roll right over into me, in our program in basketball. And then hopefully if we do the same thing, and then that rolls right over into baseball and track and those sports when they go there, and just kind of continued process there. So that's a positive thing we have here. A lot of kids that play multiple sports, which is tough right now because I've got like 3 varsity kids in the gym right now off season. The rest are in football. So and we're not
Yeah.
going to get them until November sometime when we start scrimmaging other teams. So it kind of get them in there on the fly. But it's a good thing, having those kids that do those multiples. I was a multiple sport player, and I think it's really important. So but it's a good thing here at Hera, personally, and for us.
I'll just say, as a girls coach, I certainly am not envious of the boys coaches when they're trying to balance the football and all that. But as many coaches will tell you, those football players, those ones who, especially those ones who really love football, they bring a whole different mentality to a
Here
team.
they
Some of
do.
those guys
Here they do. They bring a toughness and a physicality and a
get them under the boards, right?
just a teamsmanship. Talking about our size, for instance, I got 2 guys coming from football that are going to be our quote unquote post players this year, but they're like 6 foot and 6'1", but they're 2 of the most athletic guys we have. They both jump really well. They both run really well. They're both strong as they can be. They're physical. They're tough. And they bring a mentality that you just can't coach. Like they get on the floor, and it's just everybody sees it, and they just bring it, and other guys feed off of that. And I think a lot of that has to do because they're out there competing in another sport, in another environment, and just being able to carry that over and kind of be leaders through the way they play and the stuff they learn out there and the stuff they learn from their coaching out there that feeds into us. So
Yeah, no, that's awesome. One of the things you touched on too, and I think that really helps, and it goes a little bit beyond um maybe just alone in a basketball sense, but more of like a program culture and a school culture thing, is the high standards it seems that like a lot of the coaches have, and also the way that the coaches work with one another. And I think that must help significantly with the players to know that there's so much consistent messaging going on with all the
yeah.
different coaches, and they're all holding, they're being held from sport to sport to, really high standards.
Mhm.
Not
We
Go ahead.
got right now we've got something that works for us is we have a first period of the day for us is our advanced weightlifting class, and we have, I think, like 74 athletes in there, boys and girls, and it's mixed boys and girls, and we have boys and girls coaches in there. So it's turned into a good thing, one, that we got that many kids in the weight room lifting every day that are all athletes. So that's awesome, and it's that number's growing every year. 2, we've got coaches from just about every sport in there coaching them in the weight room. So they're getting coaching from all of it, not just their one coach that they see every day in practice, whatever. So they're getting to know us. They're getting to build that relationship with us. We're getting to get that relationship with them. It's brought other kids into other sports that they might not have played had they not, been around us or whatever. So that's kind of been a tool that has, there's pros and cons to everything, and not every athlete that we have is in there. Not every basketball player I have is in there. So that kind of makes it tough a little bit. But as far as the ones that are in there and the way it's a smooth sailing ship. It gets in there and they roll, and they all enjoy it and they get after it. And it's first thing we start at 7:30 in the morning, and they go until 8:30, and then they, shower up, clean off, and get ready to go to class. And, being around the different coaches, it's a good atmosphere. And I think that's carried over too, and then they see the football players see the other coaches, in the stands or on the sidelines during the game. And then when basketball comes, we see the football coaches and wrestling coaches and softball coaches in the stands. And then baseball games where, and it just, everybody just wants to see everybody be successful, and it comes from those types of situations.
And I think for coaches who might be stepping into a situation where the culture isn't necessarily great or established yet, I think that's one of the easy ways maybe to kind of establish some good rapport and establish some good relationships is kind of be that coach who's going to be out there to the other sports, or reach out to those other coaches and try to bring them together a little bit. Absolutely. And because I know, and this too, that it is very easy to get on like your coaching island and be kind of isolated and kind of do your own thing. But if you can kind of bring it together and kind of bring those coaches together and kind of encourage and be that guy who champions like all the sports that your players play, like I think that's a huge step in the right direction that like pretty much any coach could probably take.
Yeah, developing relationships with the rest of your coaching staff, I think, is huge, because you don't ever, I've been there before. I've been in a situation where you feel like another coach is trying to, I don't want to necessarily say trying to on purpose, but almost hurting your program because of what they're telling kids, or trying to get kids to stay in their sport and not be, and I've seen that happen. And that's, that really can make things difficult, because, high school kids will listen, and they'll listen to a coach, and they'll listen to things that are being told to them. And, and then it can really cause problems between them and their other sports, or make them wavered on decisions, or should I do this, should I do that? When kids, they get 4 years in high school, they need to do what they want to do, and they want to go play that sport, they need to try to go play that sport, or they, whatever. So developing those relationships with the coaches and the kids from the other sports, and yeah, it's just so important. And then, that just leads, as coaches, we look in the student section during our basketball games, and that student section's full up there. And those kids, ours is called the Rowdy Crowd. And
nice.
we make them shirts and each year, and then they get up there and get after it. And that's huge, and a lot of people don't understand how big that is. If we got our Rowdy Crowd going over there in the stands, and then we got our band up in the stands playing, you talk about atmosphere, and it just, that our kids play better because of that, and that stuff's huge. And that's kind of where that stuff comes from, is they know that, they want to be there, and they know that people care, and that they're going to get those athletes that are in the stands and the Rowdy Crowd are going to get that same thing when they're playing their sport, so.
No, that's awesome. I think that it's really, again, it's something that it seems perhaps like really simple, but it can't really be said enough just about just the culture, I think, of athletics that kind of gets built at the school when everybody has each other's back and everybody's supporting each other. Like, you just get this level of buy-in, I think it is, at the school from the players, and they really, in my experience, right, they love supporting each other and supporting the other sports, and just like obviously they love receiving it on the other end, and it's infectious. It just really builds on itself.
I think, I'm a believer that I think if you look at a school itself that's being successful, academically, in the school, being not talking about any kind of athletics, if that school's successful in the school, more than likely they're pretty successful in athletics, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
I think it works together, because all that stuff carries over. So
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. You mentioned before about the competitive aspect of your players, and they're competitive and they like to compete, and especially you said this group you got coming up. So I was curious about, as we kind of think about the term of quality people culture, how that kind of translates into the practices that you're able to run. I imagine that you're able to run some pretty solid, some pretty hard practices in a good way, because it sounds like you got players that have bought in. Is that competitive aspect? Is that something that comes out, or is a part of your practice design?
Yeah, well, and so every program's got its strengths and got its weaknesses, and we definitely have had our weaknesses in the years that I've been the head coach. And one of those things that I use that word compete and competitiveness that you just brought up, is if there's one thing that I thought we've struggled with at times the last couple of years, is being consistently competitive, and a lot of it being from that mental aspect. We went through those years I was talking about where we were so good and we were making the state tournament and the expectation was there, and then just like any high school, we had a couple of years where we kind of hit, kind of went down a little bit and struggled a little bit. And we've had, man, the last 2 seasons, I know it sounds like excuses, but between COVID and injuries, it seems like life hasn't been fair for us the last couple of years. We've lost so many kids to injury and sickness. We had a kid last year that got the flu like twice during the season.
Wow.
And he was one of our starters and our leading scorer there for a little bit. And then he gets sick and he misses time. He comes back, gets sick again, and then he was never the same. And then, another one of our top players last year rolls his ankle really bad, misses a couple of weeks, comes back, rolls it again really bad, and just stuff like that. And that can really waver on kids, and that adversity and that toughness, they start, they pay attention to it, if that makes sense. And it kind of messes with that competitiveness. And as soon as something looks like it's going downhill again, they say, here we go again,
Yeah.
and that's something that we've, that I've looked at as a coach. You do the same thing, I'm sure. You evaluate yourself in your program after every single practice, after every game, after every season. And that's one of the things, coming into this season, I said, we've really got to make sure that our kids compete and want to compete every day. And I'm talking from the junior high up here, and if we can get our kids at the junior high, our junior high here at Hare, we have 7th and 8th grade basketball.
Hmm.
And, you know, what can we do to get those kids at that level with that competitive mentality down there? That way we don't have to coach that when they get to us at the high school. So that right now is one of my big goals as a head coach for our program, is really focusing on my junior high kids and develop, whether they win games or lose games. Obviously winning is important, that's what we want, but what can we do that when those kids become freshmen and sophomores for us, that we're not having to coach the competitiveness, that those kids are stepping on the floor and they've got compete on their mind, that they want to take care of business against that team that's out there against them, and that's their expectation and that's what they want, that we don't have to fight that or coach that's just a given, that just happens. If you're in the Hare Panther basketball program, that you're a competitor and you're going to compete no matter what. um, and that's kind of, to be honest, in our program it's lacked a little bit the last couple of years, and I think there's been a lot of reasons why, that some uncontrollable, some obviously controllable, just like anything. But that's kind of my big thing right now as the coach, is getting that as a norm, that's going to be the norm, from every kid that's in our program. And I think we're on the right track of doing that. One, we've got the right kids. We've got the kids that kind of already have that mentality a little bit. We've got some really good classes coming up through the junior high. We've got some good kids even younger than that. I think we've got a chance to have a good run coming up with some of our young kids, and they've kind of already got that mentality to them. And I think a lot of that's, we've had some good little league coaches that have been coaching them still. And I mean, we've got some guys that have done
Nice.
a great
That's
job.
excellent.
And, the involvement, I'll kind of off topic, but just kind
Hmm.
of give those guys credit. We do a little kids camp every summer in June, and the last 3 years I've had over 100 kids that have signed up and been in it.
Wow.
Having over
That's
100
awesome.
kids in the gym for camp is just puts a smile on your face as a coach, because those kids are wanting to be there and they're having a good time, and that's going to translate. Eventually, I'm going to be coaching those kids, and
Hmm.
so that's huge. So that's kind of the big thing with me, kind of, I know I can talk a lot and not shut up sometimes, but
Well, I mean, my next question was going to be about some bumps that you've had along the way and things that you're kind of trying to learn from that makes you to make you into a better coach. And it sounds like that's kind of like that identifying markers, is that toughness. And I think to what you said before though, right? That's kind of a wall that probably a lot of teams, maybe a lot of players are facing, everything coming out of the COVID situation over the past couple of years that it might be one of those situations where a lot of programs are maybe needing to kind of dig down deep and really maybe in some cases reestablish or establish themselves and try and getting back on track.
yeah, absolutely. It was tough. And it was tough for our program. So that first year that COVID hit us, it hit me and my family. And
Wow.
it actually
Yeah.
took me away from our program for a month. Um,
Mm.
I was away. I could not see my players for a whole month, and it was the month of November. So I missed every one of our team scrimmages. My assistant coach was having to coach all the practices. He was having to coach the scrimmages. I was having Zoom meetings with them to go over film and stuff like that. But it was just, there's no good way to do that as a head coach. I mean, you
Yeah.
try, but not being there face to face. I mean, it was so tough. And then when I came back, and here I am excited. I'm back. I've been gone a month. Let's go. Like half of my team got hit with COVID right after I got back. So it was just, and I know we're not the only team that faced that. Obviously, I mean there are so many teams around the country that faced problems like that. But just on our end, man, it was so difficult. And now being back to normal a little bit and being able to do the normal things for the most part has been a big blessing for us. But
Well, I mean that in and of itself though, that whole situation and everything involving like the COVID and those seasons, that's a big test, and I'm sure it was a big test for a lot of programs cultures, right, to see like how they're able to hold up and how they're able
how can
to
you handle it? Yeah.
maintain, staying strong mentally and emotionally tough for everything. And I get the sense, and I'll let you kind of talk about it. It sounds like your team and your program kind of passed that test and was able to kind of, as best they could, work through it and try to adapt and overcome and not let the culture slip.
Yeah, well, there was last year we kind of, I try not to be too preachy to them sometimes, but I do like to throw like in our pre-practice focus points. We do like a 15-minute pre-practice segment where we're doing drills or shooting or whatever, and then we come together and we stretch and we talk for a minute. And I threw some Bible verses at them, and one, we talked about finding the joy in the adversity, finding the joy in the struggles. And the Bible talked about that those struggles are there for a reason to get you through them and come out stronger on the other side. And that was, I think our kids really bought into that last year. Just as one example, last year, because we were facing like say the injuries and we could kind of see our team just personnel falling apart a little bit. And some of the kids, I could tell, like, what are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? And, we talked about that. Hey, these things happen, and we got to be able to still find joy in this. We got to be able to say, hey, we're still here. We still got a team. We still got teammates. This is fun. This is joyful. And we got better when we did that. And that's just one example of of doing that. But I mean, I think a lot of that, just, I got to give kids credit. We got, like I said, I've been fortunate to have great kids, and for the most part, the kids kind of handle a lot of that themselves, because
Hmm.
they get good parents, good home lives, good people outside of basketball too, that help, and parents that support you as a coach, and will back up the things that you're saying and teaching them, and pushing them, and trying to hold them to those high standards and expectations too. That it's not all us either. There's outside factors those kids have too that helps meet those.
Always nice when you have the quality parent culture to go with it, right?
Absolutely,
And you got
absolutely,
them. I mean, and
absolutely.
you talked about that, right? How, when you stepped in and you had the talented team that you did, having I'm sure it was great to have, parents who were, on your side, and parents who knew you and trusted you and believed in your vision as you were stepping into the role, because if they didn't,
We did.
things could have definitely gone sideways.
We did. Any, you're a coach. I mean,
Mm,
it's not always perfect, and it's not always, every situation, every year comes with some negative things. And when you're dealing with as many kids and parents, and that kind of was going to lead me to when you said, what are some of the bumps you've had? I was
yep,
kind of something I was going to talk about is,
go for it.
one of the things that I have found, one of my hardest things for me that I've found in the way I run my program is, we want those quality people, we want to teach those things, but as well as I do, there's always some situations where there's some kids in your program that just can't, they don't do what it takes, or they just can't follow those standards, those expectations, and sometimes they have to be removed, or they, and one of my big things is when that's been tough for me that I've tried to grow as a coach and as a program is, when do you draw that line of, I've tried to help this kid as much as I can. We've tried to
Mm-hmm.
teach this kid these things and do these kids. When do you draw that line that you finally just say it's not working out, and that you have to remove that kid from your program? Because those things happen, a lot of times when you do that, your program gets better because of it. And but that's not something you like as a head coach. I don't like doing that. That is not my favorite thing in the world to do. And but sometimes, and I've been guilty of holding on to a kid too long, and it negatively impacting my team because I was trying to personally help that kid, when with me trying to personally help that kid, it was also hurting my team at the same time. And where was that point of, I went a little too far individually with this kid, I got to put my team first, I'm hurting my team. That, to me, that's such a difficult line, because our job is to be there for those kids and to help those kids. But at the same time, I've got a team and a program to run. And where's that point of, this is hurting the team, I'm going to have to cut this tie, and we're going to have to move on. And that doesn't always go over well sometimes. And that's when you get the parents sometimes that don't understand what you're trying to do. And sometimes getting parents to buy into the reason that I'm holding this kid accountable, and I'm making these decisions, these discipline decisions, or sitting a kid out a game, or having to remove a kid, it's because I love that kid, and I'm trying to teach that kid something in that moment that hopefully carries on and will help that kid later down the road. That if I let that kid slip by with that and get away with that, then I'm just setting that kid up for failure, and that kid's going to not learn in that moment from me. So to me, that's been one of the hardest things about being a head coach and running a program is where's that line of, this is where we have to stop and just cut the tie with this kid or whatever, and move on. And it happens every year. I mean, you have kids that don't follow your rules, that you know don't show up practice, they fail, they become ineligible, they can't, they just do
Mm-hmm.
things, just kind of removes themselves. And that's never an easy thing, but it's a reality thing.
Yeah, yeah, and that's going back to a part that you mentioned earlier about the idea of like leadership and creating great individuals, and that sometimes those teachable moments that you have to give a player are things that they got to apply to their life beyond basketball. If you make the decision that they're not a good fit for that team, you're kind of teaching them a lesson. It's going to help them later in life, but it's the lesson of like because of these choices or these things that you decide to do, like here was the consequence that you get. And that might be a lesson that a player that you had to let go might keep with them for the rest of their life, and they can go on and do great things because of that lesson.
Yeah. And there's other story. I've got a kid in my program right now who's a junior, and he got removed from our program as a freshman, and because he didn't meet some standards that we had, and he got removed. And he came back the next year and talked to me, and we had a plan in place that he had to meet some expectations before we'd allow him to come back on. And long story short, he did. And
Yeah.
he really grew up, and he really matured, and now he's a junior this year, and he's really developed as a player. um, Great hard worker, the other teammates love him. And that's, to me, that's an example of why we do those things, because that kid right there took it and learned from it and got better from it. He didn't cry about it, he didn't blame anybody about it, he didn't put the fault on me. He took it, and he grew, and now he's an asset to our program. And so that's, when you see something like that happen, that me personally, that lets me know that what we're doing is working. There's a reason.
Yeah.
It may not work for every kid like that right there in that moment, like it did for him, but it did for him. So that shows me that it works, that it's
Yeah.
there. And because he's changed and he's been better for it. And he's been a better student in the school for it. He doesn't fail classes anymore. He's there. He's on the football team now. He's helping the football program. He's, so it's just kind of one of those small success stories that just kind of gives you some support personally that, yeah, we're doing this right. There's a reason we're doing it. It's making a difference. So
Yeah, and that one story is kind of in some cases maybe all you need to know, like, all right, this is proof here
that's it.
that we're doing things the right way. No, that's awesome. Before we hit our last couple concluding questions, I did want to ask you, Coach, about what you kind of feel is next. Like, what do you feel is kind of, as you look forward and you look towards the future, as you continue to build and grow on your quality people culture, what are you kind of looking for here, coming down the pipe in the future as you keep building on that?
Well, just the same thing we teach the kids. I'm learning constantly too. I want to learn as much as I can learn every single year. So I'm giving the best that I can give to those boys that are in my program that are trusting me to lead them. So whether it's reading books, and I love to read. I read books constantly, and I like to read about people and about different philosophies and thing. So just constantly learning and growing on my end is always a plan of mine. As far as, I like where I'm at, and, I've got a 6-year-old son. I know this is way down the road, but, a dream of mine is to coach my own son,
Mm.
so down the, I'm coaching his first grade little league team this year. And I know that's a little different than when he gets up to the high school level with me down the road, but, that's a plan of mine. That's a dream of mine, is to be able to coach my son in high school basketball. And, so that's, things working towards that. But yeah, just, you know, I'm the head coach of this program here, and, and it's so important to me. And that's, sometimes you feel like, as a head coach, I'm sure you do the same, is that sometimes you feel like people on the outside just don't understand how important it is to you as a head coach, that it's not just about basketball. I mean, we're running a program, and that program consists of young men every single day, and how important those kids are to us, and that every decision we make is based around trying to help them be successful. So for me, just that's every year's different. Some years we win more games, some years we don't. But at the end of the day, if I can look in the mirror and say that I'm giving them everything I can give them, and
Yep.
I'm trying to do it the right way, then to me, that's winning. That's success. It may not show it on a scorebook sometimes. It may not show it on a record sometimes. But there's a lot of coaches that do things the right way and don't win very much. And those guys are good coaches. They're doing it for the right way, reason and stuff. And that's just the goal of mine. No matter the circumstance, no matter how good the players are, no matter how good our seasons are, that I'm doing my best, and I'm not slacking on these guys, that we're trying to be there for them, and help them be successful for the rest of their lives. So
Awesome. Yeah, that's certainly what it's all about. No, that's great. To wrap up, Coach, there's a couple questions I ask every guest. I'll go ahead and start with this first one here. Thinking back onto your coaching career, what is a moment from your coaching career that you think others listening would be able to learn from?
yeah, well, I got two things, if you don't mind.
Excellent. Go for it.
One, I'm going to use a play. I had a player. His name was Brett Cunningham. He was an all-stater for us his senior year, and I learned, it was my second year as a head coach, and we were a very good team that year. And we were in the regional. We were getting to host the regional tournament, and we were in the regional championship against a very good team from Tulsa. And I learned a very valuable lesson as a coach that game, that I acted. Um, Me and this player both acted out of anger and caused a bad situation. And what had happened, try to make this quick as possible, is I was on the bench, and I was turned around talking to one of my players on the bench. I think I was, kid had just subbed out or something. I was focused on him, talking to him. And then all of a sudden there was some commotion on the court, and I turn around, and my player is in the face of another player, and they're bowed up chest to chest, and looks like it's, something bad's about to happen. So, I sent a quick sub in for him. Let's get him out of there. And he was our best player. He was an all-stater. He went and played college basketball up in Maine, by the way, believe it or not. But I subbed him out. Well, he didn't take that sub out very well. He came off the floor, and he was very upset that I subbed him out. And I got very upset with him really quick because he got upset with me, and how that stuff just kind of trickles and feeds off each other. And, he was trying to explain himself, and I didn't like the way he was coming at me. So I wasn't letting him explain himself. And, I got on him, and he popped back off on me and said something to me I didn't think he should have said. So I kicked him off the bench and sent him to the locker room in the middle of the regional championship, my best player. And when all that kind of cooled off and I sat down, my assistant coach, who's a head coach now, himself, very good one, he kind of pulled me there and he's like, Coach, he was okay. He was in the right. And I was like, well, what happened? And basically one of our other kids had been tackled and I think had been punched. And my player that I subbed out was just running to his defense and just getting that guy off of him. And so he was mad that I subbed him out. And I subbed him out because I didn't see it happen. I just turned around and saw him bowed up face to face with another guy. And I was like, oh no, this is bad. So I want to get him off the floor, get him away from the situation real quick. And so he was in the right. You know what I mean? He didn't do anything wrong. He was de-escalating the situation. He was there supporting one of his teammates. And so I learned a lesson and he learned a lesson too of, not making rash decisions out of anger. There's no way I should have kicked him off the bench and sent him to the locker room. I should have, let him explain himself right there real quick. It was a heated situation. I should have let him sit down and talk, so I hope that all makes sense.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
And now me and him, we've talked about that. We laugh about it now. It was a learning experience for both of us. And, we hugged it out after the game, and I knew that I made a mistake and he knew he made a mistake. And, we talked about it. We both grew up and learned from it. So that was just a situation that, now I've tried to follow is don't make rash decisions out of anger and,
Sure.
and react to things, to try to know what's going on, know a situation. If somebody needs to be able to talk or say their piece, then there's times for that can happen. So that was one. And something else, just a coaching moment. I don't, if we have other coaches listening, I always think this is real important, and something that I got from the very first coach. I brought up Jeff McCullough's name. He hired me at Sherman, Texas. Is every coach should, especially young coaches, if they're listening, log everything. And what I mean by that is have things on file. Like paperwork is so important, and it has saved me multiple times. And what I mean by that is, like, I think it's a great idea to have a player handbook that every single player gets at the very first day of school, or when your kids come from football, the very first day they get with you. You have a handbook that goes over all of your policies, all of your standards, all your rules, everything. It's all on paper. You go over it with them. You get them to sign it. You get their parents to sign it. And it just covers you. You know what I mean? Like, it's situations that occur throughout the season, a kid getting disciplined for grades or for missing practice or whatever, that it's in that handbook. It's known. It's not surprising anybody. The parents sign the book, so you can say, hey, you signed that book, you read it, you saw it, this is not surprising you. It's just having parent meeting, having your team parent meeting before the season starts to go over all those things with your parents in attendance to hear everything. And then something I suggest, something that we started doing when I was in Sherman, Texas, and I brought it 16 years later with me here, is we have a discipline folder. And every single player that's in our program has a sheet in that folder that's their names on it, and it's the discipline folder. And not every kid gets a write-up in it, but every kid has a sheet, and it stays with them through their high school career. And any single thing that happens, they miss practice, they're late, they get on the ineligibility list, they forget equipment, they get in trouble in class, whatever it is, it gets logged in that sheet. The date that it happened, what happened, what the consequence was for it, and all that stuff. And they sign it, you sign it. And it just, I know that sounds almost, over the top maybe, but when you have that situation we talked about earlier, where you need to remove a kid from your program, that things have gotten bad enough to that point, when you have that sheet that you can go to that has everything in it logged that's happened, every single thing, you'd be amazed at how that sheet can save you as a coach and save headaches. And if you have to have that meeting with a parent and maybe your administrators in that meeting too, they're going to have your back and support you because they know everything's there. Everything's logged. Everything's backed up. It's not just he said versus she said. It's there. And, um, you know,
I really, really like the idea of keeping a contact list of everything. I think that if you can get things in writing, you can get things written down, you are going to save yourself so much trouble, right? Just having that in writing, because
yeah,
that's your proof right there, right?
yeah. And like I say, I've had, we've removed kids from the program, and, you know, the parents get upset and they want to know why. And it covers
There's your
everything.
why.
Yeah. All right, this kid had this many, kid, well, why won't you give him a second chance? And you pull out that sheet and you say, here's all the chances. They've had the chances. And we have a couple, I know every situation is different when kids get disciplined and stuff, but we have a couple of concrete non-negotiables. And one is throughout our school year, if a player shows up on the ineligibility list 4 times, they're automatically removed from the program that year because they haven't developed that dependability there. And then the next one is if a player has 3 unexcused missed practices, then they're automatically removed from the program.
Mm. I mean, I think that there's something good to be said about having those non-negotiables, because then there's a kind of that certain limit, right? There's that certain, like, there's chances, but then there's certain things where once you hit that certain point, like, it's just not going to happen. Like we've done all we could in this particular year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes back to that kid talked about earlier. It doesn't mean he's done forever. Learn from it, grow. We'll give you another chance, meet some expectations. You can have another chance to come back. But those are a couple of our concretes. But yeah, those just logging everything, having everything on file. There's no guesswork. There's no he said, she said. It's there. It's everything's logged, everything's kept, and it can really save coaches a lot of headache, in my opinion.
Awesome. Coach, to wrap up, I give every guest what I call a 60-second soapbox, but I don't time anyone, so don't worry if you go longer. Kind of your
Yeah, I
platform.
can talk.
It's all good. Your platform to get out your final thought, a closing message, a closing idea, something that you just kind of want to leave the listeners with. So I'm just gonna kind of turn it over to you, and I'm just gonna kind of let you take it from here.
Yeah, something I think is real important is our job is so busy and so hectic that you've got to make your own family most important. Um, you can't you can't put as much time and effort as we do into our job and then come home to a bad situation at home. And you've got to make your spouses important. You got to make your own kids important. And to me, that's number one. And to go on with that is something that I feel is real important to me. And I hope that every assistant coach that I've ever had that coaches under me, and every assistant coach I have that coaches in the future for me, I hope they know this and feel this. And I think they have. But make sure as a head coach that you're not taking your assistants away from their family either. That your assistants have wives and husbands, and they've got kids, and that needs to be the most important to them too. And I don't want my assistants to ever feel like they've got to miss one of their kids' events or something like that because I need them, uh, you know, watching film, or I need the, whatever. I don't want them to ever think, well, man, Coach Rochelle is going to be bad. No, I want them to know that family is number one. And I just think that's really important, that make your own family important and make sure your coaching staff, because we're not great head coaches without our coaching staffs. And if they're not happy, we're going to have problems. And make their family important too, and have their family in the gym. I've got 3 kids. My 3 kids are in the gym all the time. They're in the gym at practice. They're in the gym, like all the time, interacting with our players, and our players are awesome. Our girls coach has kids. They're in there all the time. And my assistant coaches bring their kids. Like, it's just that family atmosphere. We try to preach that to the kids. We got to live it, and I just think that's really important. So that's kind of my little soapbox. I see some coaches sometimes that I think they forget that, and they don't make that as a priority enough. So
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. That I know that work-life balance sometimes can get away from us, and we can let that run
bless our
away.
spouses. So
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, bringing them in, I like that idea. Bringing them in the gym, let them come
oh
around,
yeah,
and they love it too. No, that's great. Coach Rochelle, I want to thank you so much for spending some time talking about your program, talk about Hara High School, the things you got going on there. It sounds like you got some really cool things that you've been doing, and Sounds like you got a great group coming up here in the future that's ready to compete and ready to continue all those quality people culture aspects that you brought up. So thank you so much, Coach. Good luck going forward. And it was a pleasure talking to you.
Man, thank you so much for having me on. This was a blast. I enjoyed talking with you. So good luck to you too.
Much appreciated. Thank you all for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.